And moving right into the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority being called to order at 3:08 on May 18th. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
And Mayor Devine.
Here.
May we have the roll call for the Housing Authority?
Authority Member Ajinian.
Here.
Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
And Chair Kasakian.
Here.
Thank you. And what's next, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 joint public meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority was posted on May 12th, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And next?
Next would be City Clerk regarding minutes of the joint City Council and Housing Authority meeting of April 27th, 2021 and May 4th, 2021.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move the minutes.
Second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian. Brotman.
Yes.
Kasakian.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
And Mayor Devine.
Yes. Next item, please.
Community Service and Parks regarding request for proposal, RFP to reallocate Community Development Block Grant Round 3, Cdbg, CV3, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, CARES Act funds. A, City Council motion to approve the issuance of an RFP to city and community agencies to reallocate $1,083,000 in Cdbg CV3 CARES Act fund to be used for various public social services projects to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. B would be Housing Authority motion to approve the issuance of an RFP to city and community agencies to reallocate $1,083,000 in Cdbg CV3 CARES Act funds to be used for various public social services projects to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus.
Thank you. Mr. Galanian?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. We'll just go directly to Onik Bulanikian, Director of Community Service and Parks, to make the presentation on the report and open it up to questions. Mr. Bulanikian.
Thank you, Mr. Golanian. Good afternoon, Mayor Devine, members of the Council, Housing Authority Chair Kasakian, members of the Housing Authority. Real quick, I do have a small presentation regarding Cdbg CARES Act Glendale allocation that we've received since the start of the pandemic. The first round was received back in May. The program was approved in June of 2020 in the amount of $1,175,000. Cdbg CV round 2 went to the state. Cdbg CV round 3, we received $1,615,818. Back in June 2020, the first round of allocations were allocated to 3 programs: the Emergency Rental Assistance Program in the amount of $572,000, the Small Business Grant Program in the amount of $572,000, and $30,000 for the Senior Nutritional Meals Program operated by the Community Services and Parks Department. The third allocation was approved December 2020 by City Council and the Housing Authority. We had 2 programs. One, the Education Connection Program in the amount of $950,000, medical point of dispensing for our vaccination sites in the amount of $608,000, and program administration $57,000. Staff would like to return $475,000 out of the $908 that was allocated for the Education Connection Program for operating the MPODs. I'm sorry, the Education Connection Program. We are operating at 65% capacity January through July, providing free distant learning and after-school care for GUSD students and non-GUSD students between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have worked with our counterparts over at Glendale Unified trying to market the program. promote the program citywide, but the funding in the amount of 908 was not needed, so we would like to refund or return 50% of those funds in the amount of $475,000. For the second program, $608,000 was allocated for MPOTS to operate Glendale Civic Auditorium as a point of dispensing with LA County. When the funds were allocated in December 2020, we were working on an agreement with LA County to operate the Civic. In speaking with HUD in January and February, we were told that Civic Auditorium would not meet, LA County approved Civic Auditorium as a site. The funds allocated to use Civic Auditorium were not eligible per HUD's directives because it did not serve low to moderate income households, and we would need to gather income verification. And LA County did not allow us to gather income verification for all of the participants that needed to be vaccinated. So we would like to return the $608,000 and use those funds and the Education Connection funds to RFP for city and community agencies. So what we'd like to do is request to release an RFP and for nonprofit social service agencies and city departments to apply for COVID-related purposes. So the RFP requirements must meet the national HUD objectives, and the proposals must meet must have a tie back to COVID-related, preventing, preparing, and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the proposals will be reviewed by staff, and the Cdbg Advisory Committee would invite the nonprofit agencies and city departments to interviews, and we will bring the plan to the City Council and Housing Authority in late June to approve the final allocation in the amount of $1,083,083 of CARES Act CV Round 3. That's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I do have staff available or myself available to answer any questions relating to any of the CARES Act funding and programs that we've implemented thus far.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Are there questions from my colleagues?
No.
If I could see their
Comments, no questions.
questions.
Well, Yeah, Madam Mayor?
I'm sorry, I can't see, is this Mr. Brotman?
Oh, it's Dan Brumman.
Okay.
I know, Onig, I know the CDBG Advisory Committee, typically meets early in the year and they go through this process once a year. So we're going to be bringing them all back to kind of go through the process again. I mean, I'm sure they're all busy and everything like that, and it's not necessarily what they signed up for, but they're all good with coming back and running through this again.
Yes, Mayor Devine, members of the Council, Housing Authority Chair Kasakian, members of the Housing Authority, Councilmember Brahman. Yes, basically the annual allocation for 21-22, the interviews were held in February, the last Friday in February, and I believe it was the first week, the first Monday in March. So those interviews were held. We made the recommendations and we came to Council and the Housing Authority on April 27th. Since this will be an amendment to the CARES Act funding, we would need to go to the Cdbg Advisory Committee. We would need to follow the process, have a 5-day public comment period, gather all the information, the proposals, and the Cdbg Advisory Committee recommendations, and bring it to Council and the Housing Authority in late June. But to answer your question, yes, the Cdbg Advisory Committee is aware that they would need to meet and interview the nonprofit agencies.
Okay, nobody has a problem with that, just time-wise, coming back together. I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
They do it once a year.
It is a lot of work, but we Before we set the meeting date, we did confirm with all of our committee members to see if they would be available to interview the agencies.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. And I appreciate the work they put in, and you could thank them for us.
Will do. Thank you.
Councilmember Kasakian.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Mr. Bolanikian, for pivoting and adjusting during, everyone seems to be doing so in the middle of this pandemic. And I'm very grateful that you were able to find a way that potentially, hopefully, we can use these funds by some of our community-based organizations. I'm looking forward to see what kind of applications you entertain, what kind of proposals, and I'm hoping that we will find a way to spend all this money for those explicit purposes of preventing and addressing COVID-19. I would also like to see if there's any ability to have organizations that could do some outreach to the various segments of our community that our best efforts have not succeeded in encouraging and urging to get vaccinated. I think that very much falls in line. You would know the details of what the funds can be used for, but if we can find ways to more ardently and aggressively get this message out there to as many people as possible, it would be great. From my understanding, we are just slightly behind some of our neighboring communities in terms of vaccinations, and there really should not be any reason for that. I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm just hoping that some of the funds can be used for that purpose. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Najarian.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. So, whoops, I think we're fortunate to have these additional funds. But I don't want these to go back to the CDBG and get the same old allocation that we've had before. I really want to see a much broader and wider distribution of these funds to agencies, community groups, et cetera, that have not been successful in the CDBG process, that do have good organizations that, with very valuable and meritorious efforts. So I just don't want this to go to CDBG and have them give it to the same groups again. I want new groups to apply. I want groups who have applied in CDBG but not been winners, perhaps to be the first in line for these additional funds. I have no problem having this come directly to the city council, actually. I mean, it's just, we've got very strong organizations that receive funding year in, year out by the CDBG group. But that doesn't mean these other groups that maybe are a little bit smaller, a little bit different, shouldn't be able to benefit from this additional funding that we have this time around. And then maybe in future years, they would become strong enough, let's say, to compete with the other, the perennial, the all-stars of our CDBG process that we've seen for the last 10 years. So I don't know if that's a message or an expression of intent on my part, but that's what I would really like to see. I want to see new groups that haven't been successful, and we hear how difficult it is to give it to one group rather than the other, but the group that won maybe is a little bit better in all the categories that we require them to do. I want to see new groups getting this, and I'm hoping that we can see that in the application process and in the vetting and in the selection.
Anyone else? Yep.
Do we have to second that?
Mayor, before we move on, I did have a caller, but it looks like she dropped off the line. Can we wait about 45 seconds?
Yes, I have some comments to make, so
Go ahead.
if my colleagues don't have any. I have a question, Mr. Bolanikian. Since this funding was directed to the HUD, the vaccination center, can it be used by our fire department for the Jewel Vax center or any of the new vaccinations? I know that they're planning on doing some evening vaccination locations, and can this be used for that funding?
Mayor Devine, members of the council, Chair Kasakian, members of the Housing Authority. It can't because the vaccination site is in North Glendale, and we would require income verification. And income verification, collecting that information would be a little bit, it wouldn't be easy collecting it, and I don't think we can collect income verification operating our vaccination sites, if I'm not mistaken. I would.
In terms of, can I just ask a question on that? I understand how this income verification and the collection and validating that information is presenting itself to be a challenge for the use of these funds. Is there anything that precludes us from coordinating with programs that we run as a city where we already know the participants are low income and qualify? You know, if the purpose of this is possibly to vaccinate, if it is to vaccinate people, and we have, for instance, Section 8 programs, we have other programs in which folks are participating, we have a number of senior housing facilities in this community, and they may have already been vaccinated, but there may have been folks that didn't. Perhaps we can, and our Section 8 participants are not just seniors, but any of our programs where we serve low-income members of the community, or even working with the school districts and finding out if someone participates in a school lunch program because of income, that would essentially, and I hate this phraseology, but hit multiple birds with one stone, would it not?
Yeah, we can. We've looked into vaccinating our seniors, and we work with, Glendale Memorial, Glendale Adventist, private clinics. We've had a number of vaccination days at the Adult Recreation Center, in addition to Civic Auditorium. We haven't used any of the MPOT funding, hoping that Civic Auditorium would operate as LA County MPOT. So those vaccination efforts were completed in January, early January and February. But we can look into working with the nonprofits and the churches and the religious institutions in the area to see if vaccination sites would be needed down in Adult Recreation Center or South Glendale. The concern with that was that that would be taking away from the Jewel City Vax, and their numbers would be lower than anticipated. That's why we wanted to centralize, I believe, to have one large vaccination site in Glendale. But we can certainly see if we can use those funds and operate something smaller down in South Glendale.
Yes. Kalania.
Yeah, if I may, in response to your question, the Jewel City vaccination site was set up financially by the Glendale Adventist Hospital, and the cost of putting that program together is reimbursable by FEMA. So FEMA will cover some of those costs. And we are also looking into providing mobile clinics for vaccinations in South Glendale that Councilman Kasakian has brought up in the past. So that may be something that could be eligible for this funding.
Okay, and that's good. And I think I mentioned that the 2 weeks ago when I went to the church, the Filipino church,
Yes.
and they were going to set up a mobile vaccination unit at Home Depot.
Yes.
So I know that's possible, and so hopefully we can do something like that.
Great.
I also want to mention that today doing some taping over GTV6, and they had just finished doing a PSA with a doctor trying to encourage the Armenian community to get vaccinated, to kind of dispel some of the rumors that they've been hearing. And I'm also going to be going to the ARS, the Armenian Relief Society, with a doctor next week to also get that same message across. So I know we are trying very hard to get to as many of our residents as we can, but that doesn't mean we can't do more. So I'm all for that, and I'm also in favor of Council Member Najarian's suggestion that we dole out this funding to new groups, to groups that haven't received and haven't received a big chunk of money so far. So with that being said, has the caller?
No, Mayor, she hasn't called back.
Nothing?
Mayor
Yes.
Devine, Mayor Devine, one thing that I do want to say is the new groups, we do encourage new groups to apply. And if they have a program that's COVID-related, they can apply for these funds because these funds can be used for COVID-related purposes. And there are groups out there that are reimagining themselves and, responding to COVID. And we do recommend them to apply. I know staff, they have been contacting all the nonprofits, in Glendale. We have a list about 120 nonprofits. So we'll send out if this is approved, we'll send out the notice tomorrow, May 19th, for them to apply. We do have staff that will provide some technical assistance if need be. And the last 4 years, we have had a number of new organizations that have applied as part of the annual allocation. So we are trying to reach out to all the nonprofits in Glendale that provide services.
I'm sure your staff will be doing a really good job of that.
Thank
you. Thank you. So with that, Mr. Agajanian?
Mr. Onik, I want to ask you, this allocation of funds should be only for the purpose of COVID-19?
Yes, preparing for COVID-19.
For the nonprofit to be involved with COVID-19?
Yeah, so nonprofit can be food pantries, homeless services, if they provide any rental assistance, after-school programming, different types of programming related to COVID-19.
Childcare would qualify.
Childcare, yes.
Mayor Devine?
Yes.
If I could I want to weigh in just to say that I want to thank, Councilmember Kasakian for bringing up this point about the gap we have with our vaccine rates and yeah, anything we can do, I'm all for that because I think there's probably nothing we can do that's going to be more impactful right now than getting our vaccine rates up, and particularly our seniors, where we really have a very significant gap. Not just a small gap in terms of the percentage of our seniors vaccinated compared to the county, compared to the state. It's a little puzzling. So if there are any organizations out there that can attack that specific problem, I think we couldn't make better use of the money than that. So I just wanted to second that sentiment and hope you can, in going out and looking for candidates for these funds, if you could really try to specifically focus on that aspect.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion from council for this item.
I'll move the item, alternative one.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Devine.
Yes.
And do we have a motion for the Housing Authority to move the same?
I'll move the item.
I'll move for Housing Authority.
That was moved by Authority Member Devine and seconded by Authority Member Parazian. May we have roll call?
Authority Member Agajanian,
Yes.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Parazian,
Yes.
and Chair Kasakian.
Yes.
And what's next, please?
Adjournment.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Move
for
to
council.
adjourn for council.
Second for council. Do we have
Thank
a
you.
motion to adjourn for the Housing Authority?
Yes.
Move to adjourn for housing.
And
Second.
Second.
thank you.
Thank you. We
We
are
will stand
adjourned at 3:32.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, moving on to council. The May 18th regularly scheduled meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have roll call, please? At 3:33.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Present.
Brotman,
Here.
Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
and Mayor Devine.
Here. What's next, please?
One is closed session, 1A conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Jung versus City of Glendale, LASC, case number BC 717130.
Mr. Garcia, do you expect to report out on this item?
Madam Mayor, we do not anticipate reporting out.
All right, thank you. So we will recess to closed session. Thank you.